Could the United States take back the Panama Canal? Have you been wondering that? I know I have, ever since President Trump suggested that we should take it back. So I've done a lot of research, and I thought I would share that with you. I did waste about an hour up front because I ended up watching Van Halen music videos, starting off with Panama, of course. Did you guys know that Panama was not actually about the Panama Canal? Van Halen's song Panama was not about the Panama Canal. It was about a car. Anyway, wasted about an hour, but I'm back. Yeah, so we did give away the Panama Canal, which seems stupid. If you're going to give something away, you usually wait until it's broken, right? Like if you're going to give someone an old TV or, an old lawnmower, usually they don't work very well, but to just finish the Panama Canal and it's pristine, beautiful, new, it's great, and then to give it away seems kind of stupid. Anyway, so let's go ahead and dive in. I'm not going to be digging into the history of the Panama Canal. We're going to be going right into could we take it back by looking at some of the treaties, provisions, and some of the facts that were shared in the most recent Senate hearing. So, of course, we're going to start with the Panama Canal Treaties of 1977. They should have just named the treaties something that we're going to come to regret treaties. But anyway, Panama Canal Treaties of 1977, and there are actually two treaties involved. The Panama Canal Treaty that transferred control to Panama, and then the Neutrality Treaty that ensures the canal remains open and neutral for all nations. Two separate treaties, but actually most people just talk about the Panama Canal Treaty as if it's one. The Neutrality Treaty included a provision for unilateral U.S. intervention to maintain the canal's neutrality and operation. And that's key to what we'll be talking about when we're talking about whether the United States could actually take back the Panama Canal. The United States retained the right to act to protect this neutrality. This was back when Jimmy Carter was the president, who obviously had some great foreign policy. I mean, what kind of foreign policy isn't fantastic when you give away $1 billion shortcut for global trade? I mean, genius right there. Jimmy Carter, or as I like to call him, Joe Biden #1. And we had Joe Biden #2. So we spent, I think, about $15 billion in today's dollars building the Panama Canal. People died, spent a lot of money, tons of effort, all that, and then we got done and said, hey, you know what would be better? What if we didn't even own it? Morons. So here are some of the key provisions of the Neutrality Treaty. Article 2, that says the canal must be open to all nations on equal terms. And then Article 3, equitable tolls and fees must be applied. So looking at Article 3, there must be equitable tolls and fees, especially to the United States, right? But somehow Panama is treating the United States like a guy at a bar who just got cut off. All right, let's go to Article 5. Article 5, only Panama can operate the canal. No foreign military presence is allowed. That's going to be a key thing we're going to talk about later. And Article 4, the United States and Panama have separate obligations to maintain neutrality, allowing for unilateral action if neutrality is compromised. So basically, the Neutrality Treaty is a list of things that could go wrong, and we decided to do it anyway. I did watch the Senate hearing they had on the Panama Canal on January 28th, just a couple of days ago. And some of the information from that hearing I've included in these particular slides. But from that hearing, they said that the United States can determine for itself if a violation has occurred, which is in line with the way that I read the treaty, is that the United States can determine that, and they confirmed that. Which, that just makes sense, right? If somebody's robbing you or breaching a provision that they shouldn't against your interests, you're going to be the one who needs to decide that, not someone else. If you're getting robbed, you're not going to ask the guy robbing you, hey, are you sure you should be out of my bedroom rifling through my underwear drawer? No, you're going to be the one who wants to be able to stop him at the front door. So we are the ones who get to decide if these provisions are being violated or not. The foreign control is a key issue, and what level of influence is too much. because right now we have some Chinese companies that are operating ports, and I think the argument is kind of in a gray area on how much control does the Chinese government have, and that's really kind of where one of the key issues. The presence of a foreign security force, even unofficial ones, could violate neutrality. When President Trump first started talking about the Panama Canal and that maybe we should take it back, the president of Panama actually sent a letter to the United Nations complaining about it, saying, we don't think this is right. But here's the thing, this treaty is between the United States and Panama. The UN's not involved. Why would we want to ask the UN their opinion? Should we just ask China directly? Let's just bypass the UN and just ask China. Are you guys doing anything you shouldn't? But you'll be honest and tell us, right? Who's on the Security Council in the UN? China and Russia? Oh, good. Let's ask them. No, we're not going to be asking the UN. And we don't need to ask the UN. They're not involved in this. Now, here were some general concerns that were brought up in the hearing. And then in the following slides, we'll actually have more specifics that tie into these more general concerns. But some of the concerns raised in the testimony: if Panama allows a Chinese state-owned company to operate key infrastructure, could this constitute indirect foreign control? So we do have Chinese companies down there right now that we're going to talk about. Another issue was, could covert security forces or intelligence agents embedded in commercial operations undermine neutrality? Seems like the answer is obviously yes, right? If they had any kind of agents, field agents, intelligence officers who work for the Chinese government who are embedded in one of these ports, that definitely could be a great concern. The treaty lacks an independent dispute resolution mechanism. Each country judges for itself, which we've hit on that several times, that it would be up to the United States for us to determine if we think this is being violated. Now, first, do you think that China is going to operate something by the Panama Canal and have a name like, Panama Canal Domination, Inc., or We're Here to Take Over the Canal Corporation? They're obviously going to be doing it in a more subtle way than that, right? So in that hearing, they raised some specific concerns, and these are all going to be relevant to Article 5 that we talked about earlier. Chinese companies operate 2 ports on the Panama Canal, located at either end of the canal. On the Pacific side port, it's around the size of the port of Houston, handles around 4 million containers per year. On the Atlantic side, the port is the size of the port of Miami, and it handles about 1 million containers per year. Also, Chinese companies are constructing a bridge across the canal at a notably slow pace, potentially allowing China to obstruct the canal without warning. If I remember right, I think that bridge was going to take 10 years to build across the canal. So basically Chinese companies have a port at each end that they're controlling. That's not a red flag. That's 2 red flags waving at each other. Come on. I mean, I definitely think this is something to be really concerned about. They have a huge port on one end, another port on the other end. They could possibly control both ends of the canal. I don't know if you know this, but the canal only has 2 ends. So they potentially could control both of them, and a bridge in the middle. I mean, if we don't get concerned now, when would we get concerned? Are we waiting for them to put up a really big neon sign? We control the canal now. Or, now entering China when you get into the canal. This should definitely be raising a lot of red flags. And further in the hearing, they talked about some security concerns, some specific security concerns. The Chinese companies operating in Panama are subject to China's national security law, meaning they could be forced to comply with directives from Beijing. So the way I understand that is, according to that law, Chinese companies have to do what they are told from Beijing, even if they are operating outside of Beijing, so anywhere around the world, which could include helping with surveillance. It could include having agents of the government embedded in that company, reporting back to them certain things. they have to do what they're told from the Chinese government. So I don't know how we can't look at those companies as highly suspect, because even if they didn't have an intention of doing bad things, they have to follow this China's national security law. So they really have no choice. Chinese intelligence and military officials could be embedded with these operations, potentially violating Article 5 of the treaty, which prohibits foreign military presence. The hearing noted past precedents, like China using civilian infrastructure projects as military footholds, such as in the South China Sea. So they have done this before. Nothing to worry about, remain calm, but this is basically one of the steps they've done before where it ends up being a military base. So let's talk a little bit more about the tolls and charges, and these would go with Articles 2 and 3. Tolls and other charges must be just, reasonable, equitable, and consistent with the principles of international law. There is a concern that current tolls and the auction system may not meet these criteria. A disproportionate amount of revenue has come from the auctioning system that prioritizes profit over equitable access. Yeah, so they've implemented this auctioning system, and from what I understand it basically, the highest bidder gets to go through the canal first or gets priority. So it's kind of like Disneyland and the fast passes or the lightning passes or whatever they are, where you can pay a lot more money and go to the front of the line or go through a faster line. Well, I think that's what's happening, which is nice that they're doing like a Disneyland fast pass sort of thing, and American companies seem to be getting screwed. So, and that would not be in line with the provisions of Articles 2 and 3, that it must be just, reasonable, and equitable if they're using this auctioning system to squeeze as much money as they can out of U.S. ships going through there. Here are a few of the numbers they brought up in the hearing that had to do with how important the Panama Canal is to trade for the United States. 75% of all Panama Canal traffic is U.S. bound or originating from the U.S. The canal supports 21 million U.S. jobs and contributes nearly $3 trillion to the GDP. U.S. shipping companies are disproportionately impacted by toll increases and auction-based pricing. Bulk carriers and agricultural exports have been hardest hit, raising concerns about food prices and supply chain disruptions. Well, I mean, at least the Panama Canal isn't a real vulnerability to the United States. It's a good thing we gave this away. The thing is, we knew how important it was when we gave it away. I don't know, the level of stupidity that was involved by Jimmy Carter is just insane. But this shows you how important that canal is. So what a great choke point for the United States. If let's say, you remember how bad the supply chain was during COVID, when you couldn't get toilet paper, you couldn't get any kind of paper towel, any kind of bunch of products were just not available. Things went from being, you get it in a week or 2 weeks to you might get it in 6 months. So can you imagine what would happen in the United States if China shut off the canal? I mean, they'd bring us to our knees. Strategically, it's brilliant for China. It's idiotic for us to have given that away. But so this just shows you can imagine the kind of damage it would do if, let's say, China, that bridge they're building, it just broke down, kind of like the Francis Scott Key Bridge. It just all of a sudden, whoops, broken, canal, can't use it now for 3 years. Can you imagine the economic impact that would have? So could the United States do something? Could the United States respond to what's going on? I think the answer is yes, we could. The treaty does not require international arbitration. The United States can act unilaterally if it believes neutrality is compromised. What are we going to do? Take China's word for it? You guys promise that you don't have control over those companies. Do you promise? Then we have past statements from the United States officials in the Carter administration that were emphasizing this same interpretation, meaning where we can unilaterally decide if those provisions have been violated or not. Oh, they must have had somebody that wasn't an idiot in his administration to at least have thought about that. And the Senate hearing testimony confirmed this, that's the prevailing legal view, that we can make that determination. Now, can I just say that really shocks me? Because this is just so dumb that we gave the Panama Canal away. So the people who are dealing with this, I thought, would just be really not smart. But the fact that they said, hey, wait a minute, we should put in a provision where we actually get to be the ones who decide if neutrality is being kept, right? Because the way it was going, I just thought they probably would have said, in Panama, why don't you just tell us if you think it's still neutral, and we'll trust you. Why? Well, we were dumb enough to give you the canal in the first place. Of course we're dumb enough. Anyways, you guys, this is so dumb. But at least we have that provision in the neutrality treaty where we get to decide that. And if we decide that that's been violated, we can take some certain steps. So from the hearing, that was the kickoff of formal efforts to investigate whether Panama is in violation of the neutrality treaty. That's really the one, I think, that has the provisions that we're looking at and the ones that we talked about earlier in this video. Now, if that's true, the United States could take unilateral action to enforce the canal's neutrality. This could be diplomatic, economic, or it could be military. I think any one of those would be on the table. And we also could use this as leverage for some new amendments to the treaty or some kind of new arrangement. I don't know that I think it would be a long shot for us to use our military because they will be busy invading Greenland and Canada. So, no, I don't think we're going to attack Canada or Greenland. But I do think that'll be probably the last resort. I haven't heard anything about the Panama Canal up until President Trump said something. So I'm sure that Panama just thought, we're getting away with this. This is great. This is like we're charging double, triple. We're doing all sorts of crazy stuff and getting away with it. So President Trump saying something was probably a wake-up call. And they thought, oh, crap, somebody in the United States cares. We better. And I would think that they are going to try to do what they can to make sure they're keeping us happy with that. I mean, I could be wrong, but I would think that would start with some diplomatic pressure, and maybe if that didn't work out well, economic means. Military would be last, but I do think clearly from the neutrality treaty's provisions, and that we're the ones who decide when that's happened, I think if we decide that any of this has been broken, we could take unilateral action to try to fix that. And so if you're looking at the Chinese companies operating the 2 ports and the bridge, and the fact that under the China's national security law, where they have to do whatever Beijing tells them, I mean, come on, those are huge red flags. We need to make sure, we need to do some auditing down there or something to make sure we know what's really going on. I think probably get them out of there, because that's such a critical structure for all of our trade that I just don't think we can risk having somebody just be able to shut it down if things go south for some reason. Okay, I hope you enjoyed learning more about the Panama Canal. It was tough to try to have any jokes about the Panama Canal, but I tried. All right, thank you for watching, and thank you for watching my headlines. We'll see you later.
Please like, comment, and subscribe.